Shortly after capturing power in 1986, the NRM government preferred promoting barter trade, and later on it liberalized the economy, consequently killing off any hopes of reviving the cooperative movement, which began collapsing in 1971 when President Idi Amin expelled major players in the infamous declaration of the so-called economic war. The NRM government has since implemented several poverty alleviation programs, including the Intandikwa, the Poverty Eradication Action Plan, or PEP, the Bonawagagawale program, and most recently SACCOs, and the Youth Venture Capital Fund program. But experts say these programs have and will not yield the desired goals, and as a result, many people have challenged government to revive the cooperatives and use them as vehicles of transformation. Several other challenges also fuel the collapse of cooperatives, but luckily enough, a few states are resilient, including the Bugisu Cooperative Union. Now, the Uganda Cooperative Alliance, which was the apex body and which is important in that industry, obviously, is still functional somehow. So tonight we ask, why is government reviving cooperatives now, and what exactly is it doing to realize this goal? Also, how about concerns and challenges that led to the collapse of the cooperatives? And how secure will the revived cooperatives be from maladministration and politicization that has derailed other well-intentioned programs of government? To help us answer these questions and more is Honorable Amelia Kyambadde, Minister of Trade and Industry and Cooperatives. We expect her to join us shortly. Now, as we wait for her to show up, let's look at a little bit about the background to cooperatives. Now, these cooperative movements in Uganda were born in 1931, but it is alleged that they faced exploitation by local farmers, by some European and Asian companies. Typically, these cooperatives are groups of 20 or 30 farmers who come together, growing most times a single crop, so they can take advantage of synergies and advantages of scale to group together and sell their crops jointly and get the benefits of collective bargaining. There are basically four levels of cooperatives. We have the primary cooperative societies. That's the one I've just been speaking about, that is formed by at least 30 persons. At the second level, you have the secondary cooperative society, normally known as unions. Now, these ones are formed by at least 2 cooperative societies. Now, that means that 2 cooperative societies can come together to form a union. Now, some of the unions that we know of in Uganda, you have groups like the Nyakatonzi Cooperative Union Limited, Lango Cooperative Union. In the past, we had East Mengo and West Mengo, and so on. Now, after that level, we have the tertiary cooperative. Now, these are cooperative societies formed by purely unions. At the bottom, we have the cooperative societies made up of at least 30 people, forming 2 or more coming together to form secondary societies or unions, and then now unions can form tertiary cooperatives. Now, these could be based on geographical location, and they provide specialized services. They could also be industry-based unions. Examples of these include the Uganda Cooperative Transport Union. This one normally was, in the past, was used to help farmers. Other cooperatives transport their goods to destinations, to markets in the towns. You had such cooperatives as the Uganda Crane Creameries Cooperative Union. That's basically grouping people who are dealing in milk and creameries. That's the third level. The first level is the primary societies, the second is the unions, and then the tertiary cooperative, the one I've just been describing. Now, at the apex, you have a single body, which in Uganda's case is the Uganda Cooperative Alliance. It still has offices in Nkrumah Road, I believe. It's been there a long time, and it survived even after the cooperative movement went through a death period. Now, how did it come to die? In 1987, when the government signed agreements with the IMF to liberalize the economy and give it new strength to grow, cooperatives were seen as a bit kind of socialist, and they won't work in the capitalist dispensation, so they were allowed to die or discouraged. Eventually, the cooperative bank, which had branches in different parts of the country with headquarters in Kampala, also closed because it did not have business, specialized business. Some people have been advocating for the revival of a similar bank. They've spoken about an agricultural bank, which has distinct features from other commercial banks. Such a bank would help in providing credit to cooperatives, and farmers. The farming industry is a little bit different. You have to wait for the returns, you have to wait for seasons. There is an element of risk, a higher element of risk in case the weather is bad, there's a drought or rains fall too much and there's flooding. Some crops could fail to dry or they could be flooded and swamped out in the fields. But let's look at a little bit of the history of cooperatives. Now, in the past, they were seen as cash cows. They created a lot of value for individual farmers and communities. Now, these most of the cooperatives were formed around crops. These days we have a few cooperatives based around housing, people coming together so they can build houses together. Now, these crop cooperatives formed eventually the backbone of the cooperative movement. Now, they attracted the interest of colonial and post-independent governments. I said earlier they were originally launched in 1931. That is a clear 30 years before Uganda's independence. Now, in those days, the colonial government still thought the movement was premature. They thought they should wait until enough people have gone to school and structures have been developed and markets have been better defined. So they gave them kind of lip support. Eventually, they grew all of a sudden. Now, in the late 1930s, a parliamentary bill that was presented found a great deal of resistance from powerful private interests, and in the end, it was withdrawn. So at that time, cooperatives were forced to operate underground, but it was not until 1946 that the Cooperative Societies Ordinance was passed. Eventually, after about 10 years or so, and that allowed cooperatives to thrive. Now, by the time we came to 1960, cooperatives tackled, according to records, they tackled around almost 90,000 tons of crops. Now, if you compare that to the 1951 volume of about 14,300 tons of crops, that was a big jump, which showed that there was life potentially in cooperatives, where farmers come together to grow crops and sell them jointly. I said earlier that this is Spectrum on Radio, and tonight we are looking at the latest efforts by government to revive cooperatives. We're asking the question, how does this help in addressing some development bottlenecks? Our guest tonight is the Honorable Amelia Kyambadde, Minister of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives. When she was first appointed, her portfolio was Minister of Trade and Industry. Later, this was extended to include cooperatives. She's been, she's joined us right now after beating the jam. She's still living. You're most welcome, Honorable Kyambadde.
Thank you very much.
Talk to us about these cooperatives. We hear the government wants to revive cooperatives. What led to their death in the first place?
Well, first and foremost, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Amelia Kyambadde, Minister of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives. Most people do not know what Minister of Trade and Industry does, and cooperatives. It promotes trade, as you know. It designs or evolves policies. It supports industries in form of policies as well. And in cooperatives, it supports policies in cooperatives, but also support them in registration, follow-up, supervision, and monitoring. Well, you asked the question that why did cooperatives
die?
Why did the cooperatives die? Cooperatives died because of mismanagement mainly. Poor leadership and governance within the cooperatives. Lack of focus on enterprises, because they were supposed to deal with one enterprise or two, but sometimes there was no focus. Lack of regular subscriptions, because you're supposed to subscribe or to pay some monthly amount of money as members, and you're supposed to have shares. but sometimes people would default and wouldn't, so they wouldn't pay. So there would be, the capital base would be minimum. So which would which would not enable them to run their cooperatives. And then some of them was mainly due to actual policies, information on policies, on how to manage the cooperatives. In most cases, people were just speculating on how cooperatives would be managed. So speculation. Whereas they were supposed to follow certain guidelines or criteria, which the ministry was not providing at that time, I must admit. And lack of transparency, because they were supposed to have annual general meetings every year and talk about the money, the shares, the dividends. And then they were supposed also to elect leadership, which actually they wouldn't do. But I must admit that during that time, the government had also lost interest. That actually is the most important thing, that there was no political will. And there was no way these cooperatives could survive on their own. Because as you may recall that in the past, when government was interested in these cooperatives, it was also supporting them with value addition equipment, with storage, like warehouses, in coffee, maize, beans. Government was supporting these cooperatives. So once there was a lapse in political involvement, the cooperatives suffered as well. But then at the same time, you'd find that there was also political interference, whereby politicians would come in and sometimes force them to sell or buy without paying, or take their proceeds produced without paying them. But now that government has come out, we have come out with a very aggressive campaign of trying to revitalize these cooperatives.
All right, so the question is, why are we reviving them now?
We are reviving them now because we've realized that cooperatives are a cradle of economic growth, in that if we are looking at the trade in Uganda, at the imbalance, you realize that as much as the imports are 5.8 billion, recorded as $5.8 billion last year, the exports were only 4.6 billion last year. So there is need to bridge that gap. And there's no way you can bridge that gap without increasing production. So we're looking at the value chain now, and production must be in bulk. You cannot expect individuals to produce in bulk. Remember, in the past, government used to have estates, coffee estates, and all those have disappeared. So now we are looking at these cooperatives to create those estates, as in coffee, maize, cotton, and all those,
cocoa
and cocoa. So bulk production, that is one. 2, economies of scale. That's another reason that even if government came in to support them, it would be easier as a group rather than an individual. Then 3, quality. If you have to ensure quality, like post-harvest handling and management, You can't afford to run around in different homes trying to teach people. It is better to teach them in a group for poverty eradication. If you have to reduce in poverty, they must earn together. It's very difficult for an individual to be able to earn sufficiently well unless he has or she has had capitalization. So even as government has been coming in through the form of circles, and these circles now target cooperatives, because the circle is also a form of cooperative.
Yes.
But it is a financial arm, but it is easier that way. When we look at cooperatives, there are so many areas we're looking at. It is diversified now. That is why we actually want to amend the Cooperative Act, because now there is diversification of cooperatives. Before, we used to think about agriculture and marketing, but now you have housing cooperatives, borders can have cooperatives, healthcare can have cooperatives, professionals can form cooperatives or a consortium. You get together, you form a cooperative. One is a doctor, another one is a lawyer, another one is so they form some kind of cooperative where they have their own fund to manage their different scopes, but they are under one umbrella. So now that we have diversified cooperatives, we find that we'll be able to increase production, but then at the same time we'll be able to improve on the livelihood of the members or the persons managing them.
How does the government plan to help these cooperatives? Apart from passing the law, how do you plan to help them?
Apart from passing the law, we are already helping through microfinance support by FINA and Uganda Cooperative Alliance, but that one is just an apex body of the cooperatives. But microfinance support, government is injecting money in some of these circles. Number two, we are going to construct warehouses and silos. But we are aligning these warehouses to cooperatives. Like in Nyakatonzi, the warehouse there is aligned to Nyakatonzi. There is a warehouse that has been refurbished. There is one in Kapchora. It is also managed by Kapchora.
It's a big cooperative union.
It's a big cooperative union. Then in Kasese, there is also one. So we are looking at cooperatives to manage the warehouses, because government cannot manage the warehouses. So that is another form of support through a PPP arrangement. Then another form, machinery. We have programs like OVOP, One Village, One Product.
Yes.
And that One Village, One Product is whereby government identifies a group and look at your enterprise, and then they support you with value addition machines. We have handled that with a number of cooperatives in Serere. One is in Serere, two are in Bishenyi, two in Bishenyi. They're about 10. And in that way, we provide the machinery. But not only 10, because there are also other areas where government is giving them coolers, milk coolers.
Yes.
Milk coolers, rice hullers, and so that is the best way in which government can intervene to be able to support these groups. And it's only through cooperatives. You can't support individuals with such machinery or such capital intensive equipment. Yes.
You said earlier that some of the reasons, the final reasons why they collapse in the past was bad management and so on. How do you intend to help in that area?
Well, what we intend to do, and what we are doing already, is training. Number one, training. In fact, we want to thank Uganda Cooperative Alliance. It's doing a good job. First of all, we train them. Secondly, we ensure that they are aware of the policies or the laws that govern cooperatives. We monitor them, we supervise them, and we make sure that at the end of every year they have this AGM. And by so doing, by teaching them about these policies, we ensure that all the people know about their rights. That as a member, if you don't have confidence in the leadership or the management, you can give them a vote of no confidence and re-elect another board. So we are trying to create that awareness amongst the members, so that they are aware of their rights, to be able to be in control of their cooperatives as if it's their own. So it is mainly empowering the members with knowledge, information, awareness. Yes.
And what's the reception so far, the farmers, the individuals?
The individuals are actually responding, but the challenge we've had is that Ministry of Finance finances the circles.
Yes.
So we've had a bit of resistance sometimes from us, from the cooperatives, when we go in as Ministry of Trade. And they think it's kind of interference. So that is why I have come out aggressively on the radios and everything to teach them, because they think that the one who gives them money, Nanyini cent, the one who gives them money is the one who should dictate or guide them. And yet, what Ministry of Finance does, what we do actually, we identify the cooperatives, we register them, we give them a license, and we recommend them to finance for capitalization. So finance only gives them finances and asks for its accountability. So the technical advice is supposed to come from our ministry, yes, but the challenge,
money comes from another place.
But there is a challenge there. So that's why we were advocating for the circles, the cooperatives, to be under, at least all of it, to be under trade, industry and cooperatives for ease of management, because it brings about a conflict amongst the cooperatives, because they don't know where they belong. So that is one of the challenges we have encountered.
So you give them technical advice, somebody else gives them the money.
Precisely. And
the gravitas normally comes with the money sometimes. So how much do they get normally?
Well, it depends on the number and how much they've invested in as basis.
So it's kind of an equalization grant.
Yes.
It's not a startup fund.
No, but they have to pay back. It's kind of a loan.
It's a loan.
Yes.
Spread over how much time? Give us a profile there.
Well, a spread of about 1.5 years, 2 years, and the interest is quite low. And they can give them if they are about 30 members. And if they have base, they already have a base of about let's say 10 million. They can top them up with another 70 million.
So basically, the government is dealing with the societies. That's the small groups at the bottom.
Yes, it is.
Not the apex bodies.
Not the apex bodies.
How will those operate then? The Cooperative Alliance, for instance.
Cooperative Alliance would also do the supervision and monitoring, but I think we need to encourage the apexes, government to work with the apexes rather than dealing with the small farmers, because most of them have defaulted. Supervision becomes very difficult, and we are thinking of shifting this to the apexes, so that government deals with finance deals with the apex bodies instead of the cooperatives or the cooperatives.
Talk to us a little bit about the warehouses. What's the update there? Where have you put up warehouses? And
we have at the moment we have 8 functional warehouses, and they were fully refurbished by World Food Program and USAID. We have 2 in Kasese, one is El Shaddai, one is Nyakatonzi. We have one in Ginger. That one is a big one as well. We have one in Kapchora. Actually, that's a major one. That one was fully constructed by World Food Program.
From scratch? From
scratch. I think it cost them about $1 million.
US dollars.
Yes. And that one deals with wheat, sorghum. But unfortunately, because of the road, they export everything to Kenya.
Yes.
So we are losing out.
Where would you want them to sell the rest? Europe?
Well, to COMESA, East African Community, and instead of just dealing with small dealers along the border,
right,
instead of cross-border trade.
Okay.
Yes. So that is, then we have one in Ginger, one in Soroti. We have another one in, sorry, I've forgotten the 2 others. So we have 8 so far. And we're trying to woo some of the development partners to support us also to refurbish, because some of the structures are there, to refurbish some of the other structures in the other areas. We are supposed to have 60 warehouses, and we said 8 of them are functional. So we're trying to see whether we can get support through a PPP arrangement to construct the others. We are looking at silos as well, because silos, as you know, have bigger volumes, and those are really storage to last for some time. And then the reason why we're looking at silos is that they would have even a processing component, so that we reserve the feeds, the byproducts of these of the grains and pulses, because at the moment, because there's no storage, people are just exporting them across in their raw form,
right,
especially Sudan. Okay. It's a big challenge, that one we have.
And what's the budget that you have for this, reviving the cooperative movement?
Reviving the cooperative? That is another struggle. We've been struggling with finance to ensure that they raise it, because they're going to give us only 70 million, which is nothing.
$70 million or what?
70 million shillings, which is nothing.
70 million shillings do what? To buy paper for photocopying?
Thank you very much. Thank you also for realizing that.
Well, I mean, you're talking about building silos. One of them costs $1 million.
No, not silos. I thought just the budget. No, silos, we are looking at, each silo will cost about $1 million or so.
Yes.
The Chinese had offered, but the Chinese are asking for about 3 million per silo, which is too much
to build the silos. The Chinese construction company.
Yes. So we are trying to lobby some of the local companies here. Tirupati has expressed an interest, and we're trying to see, it's better to use the locals. Let them get their money instead of bringing in foreigners, because the interest rates are so high with the foreigners. They charge with interest. They can give you a grant, but you have to pay through your nose. So we are looking at maybe 1 M or 1.5 per
$1.5 million for every silo.
Each for every silo, because these are really mega storage facilities.
Right. And how do you want to spread them out?
Well, we are looking at the main centers, main production centers. For example, we have, and the regions. We are looking at a regional basis as well.
Yes.
Because we have one in Arua, one in Choli sub-region. That is how we intend to spread them out. We have another one in the eastern Ginger, in Bale, to be in Bale. Then we have one in Bushenyi, one in Mitiana, Mubende, Kabali. Did I say Bushenyi? Did I mention Bushenyi?
Bushenyi, yes.
Yes, and Iganga.
So you spread them out countrywide?
We'll spread them out, and we're looking at the regional basis and also the products they have and the enterprises they have in those areas. But the challenge has been land, but fortunately a number of people have offered land. But in some areas where they haven't offered land, we want to get at least 10 acres from the industrial parks, because the industrial parks have not taken off.
They exist countrywide in different regions?
Yes.
And you want to get some land from them?
If we can get just 10, because they have
10 acres for
They have vast land. They have about 200 acres.
And you need 10 acres for us?
Just 10 acres for silage. And Bali has offered so far. So we're still trying to negotiate with some of these areas.
How will you deal with official corruption? We hear the complaints you've interfered with the Gisu Cooperative Union.
Yes.
Because of politics, some people think.
Yes, I must admit that before there was a bit of politics. But then at the same time there was also a bit of corruption, especially the first board. The first board had a bit of corruption, but then I also blame it on the ministry because they were not supervising them sufficiently. So now when the second board came in under Mafabi, government also injected in some money.
Yes.
To revitalize its activities. The second board wasn't so bad under Mafabi. It actually tried.
And then why did you remove it? Oh, you've repented, you made a mistake. You can as well go back to the office.
No, it is still under investigations, actually.
He might go back. He might find
they told them to step aside. They're still under investigations. We've carried out a number of investigations.
And you found them clean?
Well, not fully. Of course, there are some anomalies, but
not gross.
But not gross.
So Nandela Mafabi could go back to Bugisu. Headline writers can prepare that for tomorrow.
Excuse me. No.
Talk to us about some of the sectors that you will be looking at. Crop production, what else? We know about housing, cooperatives, not very widespread. Which other sectors would you be looking at?
Well, crop production, we're looking at coffee, we're looking at maize. Fortunately, Simsim is another major area in the north, actually sub-region. And as you heard in the media, UNDP is coming up to support us, add value to Simsim growing and processing. We're also looking at honey. Honey is another area that is coming up. So many groups have actually engaged in honey production. And we're looking at that. Coffee, we have had challenges of processing it up to instant coffee, but even that level, at the level we're processing it, is still is marketable, is on demand. Those are the major areas we want to concentrate on.
Well, but some people have said agricultural production has collapsed. Broadly, it might be a big, but production has been very weak for a long time, including for coffee. Don't you think some of these could be white elephants, some people think?
Well,
the silos and warehouses, they could be empty in the end. Because
maybe that could also be the reason why they're not producing very well.
Because they don't have silos.
Because they don't have storage facilities.
How do you revive the chain, get them to grow? How do you link them up to that?
We're working with Ministry of Agriculture. We have decided to give it a multi-sector approach and look at the value chain. And we are working with Minister of Agriculture. Minister of Agriculture is trying to adopt a NADS scheme, but NADS scheme has a lot of challenges. It has not fully served its purpose. But what we are looking at is that revitalizing the agricultural production has to go through cooperatives. Government had come up with a zoning program that is identifying crops per region or per area, which has not been very effective. But as you said, that once we revitalize these cooperatives, and we also give in seeds, because even if they are raising their money, it's very expensive. We have to look at seed multiplication as well.
Seed multiplication?
Yes.
Improvement,
post-harvest management, because that is another crisis. Quality and standards, that's another challenge. Packaging packaging is another big challenge.
Let's talk about cotton a little bit. Is that a special industry that you might want to consider? Because in the past, when it was liberalized, the industry, farmers sold the cotton to the ginners, the millers, who actually extracted the cotton seed and sold it to oil millers. Is that an industry that you intend to support?
We intend to support cotton as well. For example, like Nyakatonzi has a lot of cotton, but the prices fluctuate so much. And you find that the producers are not so interested in cotton anymore. They over-diversify their activities, economic activities, and end up growing cotton on a very small scale. Cotton is really a crop that should be grown under estate management or cooperatives, because if you grow it as an individual,
you can't sell it in small volumes.
You can't sell it in small volumes. We came up with a textile policy because we feel that if these people grow cotton, they should have a market within. And unfortunately, the textile industry has also not picked up very well. Even the one we had, there was a good one in Mbale.
But it was African textiles,
but it was under liquidation. But that was also a source. I mean, that was a market for raw cotton. So you find that most farmers are frustrated by the market, and they are not able to produce it in bulk.
But could also be a problem with the government's industrialization policy. You neglected these factories, you sold them to industrialists whose targets are very minimal. You had Nightil operating at 10% capacity, which it used to be the biggest in East and Central Africa. It could give us bed sheets and t-shirts, school uniforms. We have to import them now. Is there not a gap in the government's industrialization policy?
There is a big gap.
What are we going to do about that? There
is a big gap. What we're going to do, as we have been trying to attract investors, FDIs, to come in and invest in that sector.
Yes.
In the cotton and in textile sector. But they, the ones who have carried out a bit of research, claim that our land is too fragmented. There is not sufficient land to grow cotton on a large scale. Because remember, in the past, there used to be cotton estates, what would I call them? So they think the land is too fragmented. That is one challenge. The second challenge, energy has been a big problem, because they say that their machines, they cannot manage their machines on diesel or engines or generators. So hydropower is another inhibition that has affected, that has been detrimental to that industry.
Right.
Because they need a lot of power.
But some people have said you overemphasize large farms, and that yet they are generally wasteful for some crops. That smallholder farmers can actually support industries if they are organized and they are outgrowing for these industries.
We have realized that even when we are talking about these cooperatives, we mention it to them. For example, like Nyakatonzi. I talk about Nyakatonzi because it's one of the successful cotton growing areas. But these are smallholders actually, but what they have in common is that they have they share the same fund and management, but they're smallholders all over a stretch of land, but they're growing them in their own homes and farms,
and they can supply according to demand.
And they can supply, yes, according to demand.
All right.
Yes.
Let's hear from the listeners. This is Spectrum on Radio 1 tonight. The latest efforts by government to revive cooperatives. How does this help in addressing some development bottlenecks? Our guest tonight is Honorable Amelia Kyambadde, Minister of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives. You can call in now. Our numbers 0414-348-111, 0312-260-390, 0312-261-390. Spectrum, hello.
Edmond.
Yes, sir, your name? Good evening to you.
Thanks for speaking with Amelia Kyambadde.
Yes, sir, your name again?
Give me the name.
Yes.
One.
Spectrum, hello?
Hello.
Yes, sir, your name?
Good evening.
Good evening to your name? Yes, Mr. Awere. Spectrum, hello?
Hello.
Yes, sir, your name?
Advising.
Yeah, advising.
Francis.
Yes, Francis. Francis, you're live on air. You're live on Spectrum, Francis.
Yes, actually.
All right, Spectrum, hello?
Yes, good evening, Spectrum.
Good evening, sir, your name?
Godfrey.
Yes, Godfrey. Spectrum, hello?
I salute you, name of Almighty God.
Your name?
This is none other than Segiri Nyamamadi from Kyambadde Conference.
All right, let's get back to the Honorable Minister.
Thank you. Thank you very much, listeners, for your contribution and questions. I'll start with number one, someone who talked about cooperatives being killed because of being under UPC and that NRM should do something or something. Well, there was a lot of politicization in the past. And during our era, we are really discouraging politics in development and developmental issues and cooperatives. And we actually encourage cooperatives to be from different affiliations, political affiliations, religious. And in fact, most of these cooperatives are mixed. So long as they share the same enterprise, what is important is the enterprise, not the politics. What do they have in common? That is the most important one. So we should avoid having involving politics in this. Nyakatwanzi and elections in Kasese, unfortunately I'm not there. I don't know much about it.
The results are coming in.
We'll wait for the results. And then...
they're not very yellow. But go on, madam.
And then Museveni, after Museveni, that we should look at Uganda after Museveni. Fortunately, there's democracy that every 5 years we go for elections. Well, let's wait for the elections, and we'll see. Anybody who is capable can rule Uganda. That's my belief.
And you think we have them? Some people don't believe we have them.
No, we have them.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So the people who think they don't have them, they don't know what they're talking about.
Well, I think it's a misconception on their part.
Go on,
But
madam.
they are there. Of course, Ugandans are
Your statement is not go on.
So, someone told us about cooperatives being useful. Thank you for your advice. The person who grew up in a cooperative. Then someone talked about national farms, that there is no money for large-scale farming. I would like to put this clear, that you don't need large farms. You can have small holders, but they share the same management. It could be a village, it could be different villages in their own respective homes or homesteads. So you don't need one big farm. You don't need, if you can get it, well and good. But the challenge is there's been a lot of land fragmentation. That is a big challenge. And it's also difficult to manage one big farm. But national farms is quite difficult, because that means government would manage it, and government is loaded with a lot of things. It cannot manage such projects because there's liberalization. We liberalize the economy, so you cannot start managing people's farms.
All right. So yeah, go on.
The other point.
Okay, let's talk about briefly before we go the implementation gap. When you look at all this timeline that you have, give us a timeline. How do you want to do it, and what are the gaps of implementation?
Well, fortunately, we've been training district commercial officers. We are looking at district commercial officers as our allies in this. They have actually been quite useful.
Is that in your ministry or in the Ministry of Agriculture?
They came in as local government, but we have been lobbying for them to come under trade, and we have a program that has been supporting them and training them. So they're playing our role. They're giving us information about the cooperatives on the ground. They're giving us information on the type of enterprises and all those issues. So we are looking at them as allies, and every district has a district commercial officer. We are looking at, we have, as I told you, we have decided to take a multi-sectoral approach, whereby that even the production officers at the districts are also helping us with information. In our records in ministry, we have 11,260 cooperatives that have been registered. But in reality, through the information of these people and our movements, we have discovered we have only 4,000 functional ones. So our challenge now is to revitalize even those which have collapsed. We have found that others have died, but we are trying to get the members together. Another thing, we have found that government had actually injected a lot of money in storage. There are so many stores out there that are underutilized.
Right.
Even maize mills, even coffee stores that have been. So we are trying to find a way of revitalizing their services using URI. We have a number of agencies under us using Uganda Industrial Research Institute to go and look at them and kind of refurbish some of them.
And get people to grow crops.
Get people to grow crops in these areas, because we realize that it's also motivational. Motivation to have such units.
We have to go, because in the past, if you're growing up in those days, you had these trucks that had employees on grow more coffee, grow more cotton, and so UCTU.
But I can thank some of these cooperatives that have been very successful. There is Nyabubare Cooperative Enterprise in Bushenyi. This one has honey and banana wine.
Right.
Kangulumira Area Cooperative Enterprise Mokono, pineapple juice. Nyakatonzi Cooperative Union, of course, that one cotton and maize. Ankola produce coffee producers and exporters.
Okay.
Masaka Cooperative Union, pineapple coffee. Lango Cooperative Union, cotton, and now Simsim.
Okay.
Gumutindo Area Cooperative, Arabic coffee. So these are very successful, and they are even exporting.
Right.
Some of them are exporting already in the region and coming.
All right. Thank you very much, Dida Diagas. Honorable Amelia Kyambadde, the Minister of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives. Thank you very much, indeed, Madam, for coming to Spectrum tonight.
Thank you very much. I apologize for coming in late. I got stuck in jam. I had to get out and run.
The traffic.
Here.
Some people call it
here and I couldn't even breathe.
Some people call it the Museveni jam. Right here. Well, thank you very much indeed for tuning in. I've been your host, Edmond Kizito. Spectrum, we'll be back tomorrow.
Thank you very much for hosting me.
Thank you, Madam.
And I thank you for giving people information about cooperatives. You are very well versed in it. I'm impressed.
Thank you.
But allow me to greet my people of Mawokota. How can I forget?
Greet the people of Mawokota.
I greet the people of Mawokota. Banange mbalamusiza nnyo ndinammwe. Program lero njogedde ya luzungu naye naluli nali kaboozi mbalamusiza era mbaagala nnyo.
All right.
And even the traders are under my constituency. Mbalamusiza, and I greet all of you.
Thank you, Honorable.
Thank you so much.
Kyambadde, thank you
for hosting me.
Thank you.